The dusty moon was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that made even a strong human like Captain Ryland feel watched. He walked slowly across the gray land, his boots sinking into the soft, cold dust. There were no birds, no wind, no voices. Only the sound of his own steps echoing in the empty valley. Raylan was far from any human base, exploring the ruins of an old alien settlement that no one visited anymore. Most humans avoided this place because strange things had happened here, things that were never explained. But Raylan was not like other humans. He was curious, brave, and sometimes a little too kind for his own safety. As he walked, he heard something behind him. Very soft, very light. At first, he thought it was just dust moving, but then he heard it again. A small step, then another. Raylan froze, his hand moving slowly to the side of his belt where his scanner was. He turned his head just a little, just enough to see shadows moving behind him. Someone was there, watching him, following him. He took a slow breath and turned fully around. What he saw made him stop completely. Two small alien pups stood in the dust, trembling, their bodies thin, their faces tired. They had big eyes full of fear and hope, like they were trying to be brave, even though they were close to falling down. Behind them stood a young girl, maybe 12 or 13 in human years. She had the same features as the pups, same soft fur, same long ears. But her shoulders were shaking. She looked frightened. Yet she stood in front of the pups like a shield. Raylan raised his hand slowly to show he was not a threat. "It's okay," he said gently. "I will not hurt you." The girl swallowed hard, then took a tiny step forward. Her voice shook as she spoke, her words broken but clear enough for his translator to understand. "Please, human, our pup is hungry." She whispered, "Our mother is still sick." Raylan felt a sharp pain in his chest, not from fear, but from something else. The girl's eyes were tired but strong, like she had been trying to protect her family alone for many days. The smallest pup looked up at Raylan, his legs shaking too much to stand straight. Raylan could see his ribs, thin and sharp. This was not normal hunger. This was deep starvation, the kind that came after tragedy. He knelt slowly so he would not scare them. "It's all right," he said, his voice soft. "I have food. I can help." But the girl quickly shook her head, stepping back as if afraid. "No, not us. Mother first." "Mother must eat first," she said. Raylan's eyebrows pulled together. He understood then that these children had learned sacrifice long before childhood should end. He looked around, noticing things he had ignored earlier. The broken houses, the burned pieces of metal, strange claw marks on the walls. This settlement had not died naturally. Something had destroyed it, something violent. And whatever did this might still be close. Watching, waiting. "Where is your mother?" Raylan asked softly. The girl pointed toward a cracked entrance leading underground. Raylan looked at the dark hole. A cold feeling grew in his stomach, the kind that told him danger was near, but he could not leave the children alone. He knew that. "All right," he said. "Show me." The girl nodded and guided him carefully toward the underground shelter. Every step they took made the small pups whimper softly, their energy almost gone. Raylan stayed close, scanning the area, feeling the air grow colder and heavier the deeper they went. Inside the shelter, the lighting was dim, only a weak blue glow coming from broken power cells. On the floor, wrapped in torn blankets, lay the mother. Raylan saw her chest rise and fall slowly, as if breathing was a painful battle. Her fur was dull, her eyes half open, and her body was shaking from fever. Raylan moved closer and checked her wound. His face hardened. This was not a normal wound, not made by accident. The deep marks were from something dangerous, something hunters across the galaxy feared. Rylan knew the truth at once. This mother had been attacked by a predator species, known for hunting entire settlements. He looked at the girl. "When did this happen?" he asked. Her voice cracked as she answered. 2 nights ago. They came, they took food. They hurt Mother. They said they will come back. Raylan felt a cold wave run down his spine. If the predators said they would return, then they meant it. And that meant the children were still in danger. He looked around the shelter, searching for clues, for signs, for anything. The dust on the floor was disturbed. The air smelled strange. He realized something terrifying. The predators had been here recently. Maybe even today, and they could return at any moment. Rylan knew he had a choice. He could leave now and save himself. Or he could stay and protect these helpless children and their dying mother. He looked at their small faces, filled with fear but also trust in him. And in that moment, his heart made the decision before his mind could. He would not leave them. He would fight for them. No matter the danger, outside, the wind began to rise, carrying a deep rumbling sound through the valley. Rylan felt the ground tremble beneath his boots. Something large was moving out there. Something hungry. The predators were returning. The ground trembled softly under Rylan's boots. The strange rumbling outside the shelter did not stop. It grew louder, deeper, heavier, like something big was walking across the valley. Rylan's heart began to beat faster, not from fear for himself, but for the small family hiding behind him. He turned to Lyra, the older girl, and saw her hugging the 2 pups tightly. Their little bodies were shaking, not just from hunger, but from the memory of what attacked them before. Rylan raised one finger to his lips, telling them to stay quiet. Then he stood slowly and moved toward the entrance of the shelter. The air outside felt colder now, sharper, like the moon itself was holding its breath. Rylan peered out, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved. Yet the sound continued, echoing through the dust fields. His scanner beeped softly, showing large energy signatures moving closer. Predators, several of them. Rylan's jaw tightened as he understood the situation more clearly. This was no small attack. This was a hunting group. And they were returning to finish what they started. He stepped back into the shelter and looked at the mother again. Her breathing was slow, each breath sounding like it required all the strength she had left. He knelt beside her and checked the wound once more. Poison, deep and spreading. He could slow it, but only if he treated her soon. He opened his pack and pulled out a small medical vial. "This will help her breathe easier," he said softly to Lyra. He injected the medicine, watching the mother shaking calm a little. But he knew this was not enough. She needed real treatment. Stronger medicine, better equipment. Equipment he had on his ship far from here, across the valley. But leaving the children alone was not an option. Lyra watched him with big, worried eyes. "Human, will they come back tonight?" she asked quietly. Rylan nodded slowly. "Yes." "They are already close," he said. The 2 pups whimpered softly when they heard this. Curling into Lyra's arms, Rylan stood, thinking quickly. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. Running was risky, hiding was useless, fighting alone was dangerous. But protecting the children was not something he would ignore. He was a human, and humans did not walk away from those in need. He turned to the children. "Listen to me," he said calmly. "I am going to get you all out of here. But you must do exactly what I say." Lyra nodded without hesitation, trusting him completely now. Rylan felt a strange warmth in his chest. Trust from someone so scared was a powerful thing. He looked around and found a metal plate broken off from a wall. He used it to wedge the shelter door tighter, making it harder for anything outside to enter. Then he checked the mother again. Her eyes opened slightly, and she looked at him with weak but grateful expression. She tried to speak, but her voice was only a small whisper. Rylan shook his head gently. "Save your strength," he said. "I will protect your children." The mother's eyes softened as if she understood. Then she let her eyes close again, resting. Trusting this strange human who appeared from the dust, Rylan moved to the back of the shelter. There was a small tunnel leading out the other side. Lyra had mentioned it earlier. A hidden escape path. It was narrow, dark, and covered in old metal supports, but it led away from the valley, toward a rocky ridge where they could hide. He checked his wrist scanner. The predators were getting closer. Too close. He needed to move now. Rylan lifted the mother gently, supporting her weight with careful arms. He felt her body tremble, but she clung to life, fighting for her pups. Lyra held the smallest pup and guided the other to follow. Their eyes filled with fear, but also with determination. "Stay close to me," Rylan whispered. "Do not look back." They entered the tunnel, the air inside cool and damp. The metal walls made small echoes with every step they took. Rylan led from the front, checking for danger, scanning the path, making sure it was safe. Behind them, the rumbling sound grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Shaking loose from the vibrations outside, the predators had reached the shelter. Rylan could hear them sniffing, growling, searching. Bang! Something struck the main door of the shelter. The sound echoed through the tunnel, making the pups cry softly. Lyra covered their mouths and whispered, "It's okay. It's okay." "Stay quiet." Rylan pushed forward, moving faster now. He could not let the predators find the tunnel entrance. If they did, there would be nowhere to run. After several minutes of careful walking, they reached the end of the tunnel. A small opening led out to a rocky hill. Rylan climbed out first and looked around. The night sky above was dark and full of stars. The ridge offered a better view, but it also felt too open. Still, it was safer than the shelter. He helped Lyra and the pups climb up, then gently laid the mother down on soft ground. She breathed easier now thanks to the medicine, but her condition was still dangerous. Rylan took a deep breath. "We must reach my ship," he said calmly. "It is not far, but we must move before they find us." Lyra nodded, though her hands shook. "We trust you, human," she whispered. Rylan felt something shift inside his chest. In that moment, he knew he would not let anything happen to them, no matter what came. He would stand between this small family and the danger hunting them. He looked back toward the valley. Glowing red eyes were moving through the dust. Searching, hunting, the predators had found the shelter, and they would soon find the trail. Rylan tightened his grip on his weapon. He knew what he had to do next. He had to lead the children through the darkness, protect them, and fight if he must, because tonight, a simple human choice would become legend. The rocky ridge was cold and quiet, but the quiet did not mean safety. Rylan looked across the dark valley and saw the red eyes moving like fireflies in the dust. The predators were searching, sniffing the air. Following the scent of the children and their injured mother, Rylan knew they did not hunt for food. They hunted for dominance. They hunted to destroy anything weak. And to them, this little alien family was weak. But Rylan was not. He turned to Lyra, who held the smallest pup close to her chest. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she tried to stay brave for her siblings. The other pup stood beside her, shaking but quietly watching Rylan, trusting him more with every moment. "We must move fast," Rylan said softly, keeping his voice calm. "My ship is past the ridge." Across the next plain, Lyra nodded even though her legs trembled. The mother opened her eyes slightly, her voice weak and faint. "You are risking your life, human," she whispered. Rylan shook his head slowly. "No," he said gently. "I am doing what any human should do." But just as he lifted her again, the ground vibrated under his feet. A low howl rose from the valley, echoing through the rocks like a warning. Raylan froze, listening. Then he heard another howl, closer this time. The predators had found the shelter empty, and now they were spreading out, searching wider, getting nearer to the ridge. Rylan looked toward the right side of the ridge and saw movement. Shadows slipping between the rocks, moving like silent hunters. He knew that shape, that speed, that intelligence. These creatures were not random beasts. They were called droll hunters, one of the most feared predators in the outer colonies. Armored skin, sharp claws, glowing red eyes, and an instinct to track anything wounded, and they almost never gave up. Raylan's mind worked fast. He needed to distract them, or they would reach the children. He needed to buy time. Even if it meant putting himself in danger, he whispered, "Lyra, stay low. Stay behind the rocks." Lyra grabbed the pups, pressing them close, her eyes wide but trusting. Rylan placed the mother carefully on the ground and pulled out a small flare device from his pack. He tossed the flare far to the left side of the ridge. A bright blue light exploded in the darkness. It hissed loudly, sparks falling like stars. Almost instantly, 3 drone hunters turned their heads toward the sound. They moved toward the flare, curious and alert. Rylan took a deep breath of relief, but only for a moment, because one hunter did not follow the others. It stayed still, its head lifting slowly, sniffing the air. Then it turned its glowing red eyes directly toward them. Rylan's chest tightened. "They know," he whispered. The hunter let out a long growl and began moving up the ridge. Its claws scraped the stone. Its movement slow but confident. It was not rushing, because it believed its prey had nowhere to run. Rylan stepped in front of Lyra and the pups, holding his weapon ready. "Stay back," he said calmly, "no matter what happens. Do not run." Lyra nodded with tears in her eyes. Pulling the pups behind her, the mother weakly lifted her head, trying to stand, but she collapsed again. Rylan raised his weapon, aiming carefully. But he knew this creature was tough, armored, hard to bring down with simple shots. The hunter climbed closer, its breath heavy, steaming in the cold air. Its eyes locked on Rylan, but its nose kept twitching. Sensing the children behind him, when it reached the top of the ridge, it let out a short bark-like sound. Calling the others, Rylan fired, a bright bolt striking its shoulder. The creature roared in anger and stepped back, but it did not fall. Its armor absorbed most of the impact. It crouched low and prepared to leap. "Come on," Rylan whispered. "Come for me." "Not them." The hunter lunged forward with terrifying speed. Rylan dodged sideways, rolling on the ground. His weapon fired again, this time hitting the creature's leg. It stumbled, but recovered instantly, turning to face him once more. Behind Rylan, the pups cried out in fear. The hunter's ears twitched, and it turned toward the sound. Rylan's eyes widened. "No," he breathed. He jumped between the hunter and the children, his body acting before his mind could think. He fired again, hitting the creature in the jaw. Forcing it back, the rage in the hunter's eyes grew. It attacked again. Claws swinging, Rylan blocked the strike with his arm guard. Sparks flying, pain shot up his arm. But he didn't stop. He kicked the creature hard, sending it sliding across loose rocks. But before he could prepare for another shot, he heard more howls. 3 more hunters were climbing up the ridge. Rylan's face tightened. "It's not just one," he whispered. "It's the whole pack." Lyra's voice trembled. "Human. What do we do?" Rylan looked at her, looked at the pups, looked at the dying mother. Then he looked at the hunters closing in, and he made his choice. "You run," he said firmly. "You take the tunnel path around the ridge. Follow the markers I placed. Go to my ship. Lyra shook her head in panic. "We cannot leave you," she cried. Rylan gave her a small, brave smile. "You must," he said softly. "Because I will hold them here." He stepped forward toward the hunters, raising his weapon. His eyes full of determination, his breath steady, his heart strong behind him. Lyra gathered her family and started moving. Tears fell from her eyes, but she obeyed, because she knew the human was doing something no one else ever did for them. He was choosing to fight for them. He was choosing to stand alone. He was choosing to become a legend. The hunters roared and charged. Rylan braced himself, ready for the battle that would decide everything. The ridge shook as the drawn hunters charged forward, their claws scraping deep lines in the stone. Their glowing red eyes locked on Rylan with deadly focus. They expected him to run. They expected him to fear them. But Rylan stood tall, feet firm, weapon raised, and heart calm. He was only one human. But he had something the hunters did not understand. He had purpose, he had courage, and he had someone to protect behind him. Lyra guided the pups and the weakened mother down the narrow escape path. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she did not stop. Every few steps she looked back, praying the human would survive. Rylan saw her turning and gave her a quick nod. A silent message. "Go, I will hold them." The lead hunter lunged first, its jaws snapping like metal blades. Rylan dodged, rolling aside, dust spraying into the air. He fired a shot at the creature's exposed neck. A flash of blue light hit its armor, cracking the thick plates. The hunter roared in pain and stumbled. But it did not fall. Instead, it grew angrier. Two more hunters leaped toward him from the sides. Rylan spun quickly, throwing a flash charge at their feet. A bright burst exploded, blinding them for a moment. They screeched in confusion, swinging their heads wildly. Rylan used the chance to shoot again, hitting one in the leg. The creature collapsed, its armor smoking. But the other regained vision fast and rushed forward. Rylan blocked its strike with his arm guard. The impact sent a sharp jolt through his body. Pain ran up his arm, but he bit his teeth and pushed back. He kicked the creature hard, sending it sliding across the rocks. He didn't have time to rest. The first hunter was already back on its feet, crawling low, watching him with rage. Rylan breathed fast, sweat dripping from his face. He was strong, but he was only human. And the hunters were born for battle. But Rylan had something else. He had human intelligence. He had strategy. He grabbed a small device from his belt, a sonic burst sphere. He pressed the switch and tossed it between the hunters. A loud shockwave burst outward. Shaking the ridge, the hunters staggered. Their senses overwhelmed, Rylan charged forward and shot the closest one at point-blank range. Its armor cracked fully, and it fell to the ground with a heavy thud. But the victory was short. More hunters climbed the ridge, 4, maybe 5 of them. Their eyes burning red with hunger and fury, Rylan's pulse quickened. He knew he couldn't fight all of them in open space. He needed to move. He needed to lead them away from the children. He backed up slowly, pulling the hunters toward the wider ledge. Each step he took was calculated. He kept firing, kept dodging, kept forcing them to focus only on him. Dust swirled around his boots as the creatures roared and snapped their jaws. They thought they were pushing him back, but Rylan was guiding them exactly where he wanted. The edge of the ridge, a narrow drop with loose rocks and unstable ground. Perfect for a trap, one hunter leaped early, reaching him before the others. Its claws slashed across Rylan's shoulder. Pain exploded through him like fire, but he did not fall. He spun around and shoved the creature backward with all his strength. The hunter's claws scrambled against the stone. Then it slipped and tumbled off the ledge. Roaring as it fell, Rylan breathed heavily. But there was no time to rest. 3 more hunters jumped at him together. They were faster now, angrier, working as a pack. Ryland ducked as one claw sliced the air above his head. He fired upward, hitting another in the jaw. The shot only stunned it, but the small delay was enough. He grabbed a smoke charge and slammed it to the ground. Thick gray smoke covered the ridge, making everything hard to see. The hunters coughed and shook their heads, confused. Ryland moved silently through the smoke like a shadow. He reached the edge again, and he shouted loudly, "Hey!" Over here, the hunters turned to the sound instantly. They charged full speed through the smoke. Too fast, too wild, too blind. They didn't see the unstable rocks near the edge. Their own weight cracked the stone surface. The ground collapsed beneath them. 3 hunters fell into the ravine below, their roars fading into the dark pit. Ryland dropped to one knee, breathing hard. His arm bled. His shoulder burned, and his lungs felt tight. But he looked over the ridge and saw Lyra in the distance. She was guiding the pups across the plain. Holding the mother tightly, they were far enough now. Safe from the immediate danger, a tired smile crossed Ryland's face. But then he heard another growl behind him. Deep, loud, full of anger. He turned slowly. The largest strong hunter stood on the ridge. Bigger than the others, armor thicker, eyes brighter. It hadn't fallen for any of his tricks. This was the alpha, the leader. The strongest of them all. Ryland stood up slowly. Tightening his grip on his weapon, he had no traps left. No fancy tricks, barely any energy. But he had one thing that the hunters could never understand. The human spirit, the determination to protect the innocent. The courage to stand, even when he knew the risk. He faced the massive predator without fear. Because he knew that his fight here would give the children more time. And sometimes, a few extra seconds were enough to save a life. The alpha hunter crouched low and roared. Ryland steadied his breath. He whispered to himself, "This ends now." And the final battle began. The alpha hunter stepped forward, its claws digging deep lines into the stone. Its huge body moved with slow confidence, like a creature that had never lost a fight. The red glow in its eyes burned brighter than fire. Ryland felt the heat of its breath as it approached. Each exhale like a warning, he tightened his grip on his weapon. His injured arm shaking, but still steady. He had fought many battles before, but this one felt different. This one was not about victory, it was about protection. It was about keeping a promise to a small family who believed in him. The alpha roared, a deep, violent sound that shook the entire ridge. Ryland braced himself, his heart beating hard against his chest. The creature lunged forward with terrifying speed. Ryland rolled to the side, barely avoiding the massive claws. Dust exploded around him as the hunter's strike cracked the ground. He fired a shot at its side, but the armor was too thick. The bolt left only a small burn mark, nothing more. The alpha turned its head toward him and snarled. Ryland forced himself to stay calm. Fear would only slow him down. He needed to think, to use his mind, not just his weapon. He spotted a jagged crack running across the edge of the ridge. It was thin, unstable, ready to collapse under enough weight. He knew what he had to do. Ryland stepped backward slowly, leading the alpha toward the weakened section of rock. The creature followed, its steps heavy, shaking the ridge. One wrong move could send Ryland falling into the dark pit below. But he kept moving, trusting his instincts. When the alpha attacked again, Ryland ducked and sprinted to the right. The creature slammed its claws into the stone. Large pieces broke away and fell into the darkness. The alpha roared in frustration, its focus fixed only on Ryland now. Ryland's breathing grew harder, his body tired and bleeding. But he refused to stop. He refused to fall. He refused to let the children lose their protector. The Alpha charged again, faster this time. Rylan turned and ran toward the cracked area. At the last second, he jumped aside. Rolling across the stone, the Alpha could not stop in time. Its massive body crushed down onto the weak rock. The stone split open with a loud thunder-like crack. The ground underneath the Alpha collapsed completely. The beast roared in shock as it fell into the deep ravine. Its claws scraped the walls, but there was nothing to hold on to. A final echoing roar filled the valley as it disappeared into the darkness. Silence followed. Heavy, deep, complete silence. Rylan lay on his back, staring at the sky, breathing hard. The pain in his arm and shoulder pulsed with every breath. But he smiled. The threat was gone. The children were safe. He forced himself to stand, though his legs shook and his vision blurred. He looked down the ridge and saw small figures in the distance. Lyra stood on the plain below, watching him with wide eyes. When she saw him standing, she raised her hand in a small wave. Rylan felt his chest warm. He had kept his promise. He climbed down slowly, each step heavy with exhaustion. Lyra ran to him the moment he reached the bottom. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief. "You came back," she whispered. "You really came back." Rylan gave her a small, tired smile. "Of course," he said softly. The pups rushed to him next, hugging his legs with their tiny arms. Their mother looked at him with weak but grateful eyes. She reached out her hand and touched his arm gently. "You saved us," she whispered. "You saved my children." Rylan shook his head. "You were brave long before I arrived," he said gently. "I only helped." He led them across the plain toward his ship. The sky above was turning a pale morning color. They reached the ship's ramp and entered the warm, safe interior. Rylan placed the mother on a medical bed and began treatment with real equipment. The medicine worked quickly, stabilizing her breathing and stopping the spread of the poison. Lyra held her mother's hand, tears falling in quiet relief. Rylan stepped back, watching them. For the first time in hours, he let himself breathe freely. Days passed, the mother healed. The pups grew stronger, and Lyra smiled again. Rylan delivered them to a safe colony where they were welcomed with open arms. The story of what happened on the dusty moon spread quickly. Whispers became stories, stories became tales, and tales became legend. They spoke of a human who stood alone against a pack of drawn hunters. A human who risked everything to protect strangers. A human who fought not for reward, but for compassion. In alien markets, in quiet homes, in every corner of the moon, people said one name with respect: Captain Rylan. Lyra told the story to every child in the colony. The pups grew up hearing it as their bedtime tale, and the mother told it with tears of pride in her eyes. "Humans are powerful," she always said, "but the greatest power a human has is a kind heart." Rylan left quietly one morning. Returning to his duties, he never expected fame. He never asked for thanks, but everywhere he traveled, someone recognized the symbol painted on his ship. The symbol Lyra gave him, a small drawing of their family with the words, "The human who saved us." And so the act of feeding a hungry pup, protecting a sick mother, and fighting alone on a ridge became a legend across the stars. A story that reminded every world that humans were dangerous. Yes, but humans were also brave, loyal, and capable of great kindness. And that simple act of compassion became one of the greatest HFY stories ever told.